No funny gear, no hats.
Nope, I've got nothing. But we got some music. Extra points if you can name the artist and the song and what the relevance is to what we're talking about tonight. That's enough. Baby. Okay, can I tell a quick story?
Sure.
Okay, back in 2006, some of you have heard this before, but back in 2006, I broke my neck. Actually, I had my neck broken for me in a staff versus students AFL footy match. And that turned out to be one of the biggest learning experiences. Well, the 6 months or 8 months after that turned out to be one of the biggest learning experiences of my life. I was in a neck brace. It was really, really difficult. The thing was, before I could learn anything, I had to get to a place where I could get past the anger, get past the frustration, get past the questioning. I needed to come to a place of acceptance. And I really, really wish I'd had the oil that we're going to talk about tonight there, because that was the hardest thing. Once I got there, then I could actually learn and grow.
And there's a reason why acceptance is usually the first step in many of the STEP programs. It's actually the first step in the Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program. It's the first step in any sort of transformational type program, because you can't really move forward and transform your life until you actually accept. Accept the past, accept who you are, accept whatever it is that you need to accept. So, at the end of the day, a lot of these emotional oils work on a really sort of subconscious level. And we listened to the Young Living Convention on the weekend.
Yep.
And one of the things that Mary, she talked a bit about Gary and his story and things like that. And she said that there was a time when Gary and her were telling everybody about the emotional and spiritual aspects to the oils, but they weren't getting well received.
Everyone said, shut up and just talk about the health benefits.
Everyone was like, no, they don't work like that. Just stop. So Gary and Mary actually stopped talking about it for a while, and they just thought they would sit back and see what happened. And after a while, people were actually coming to them and telling them about the amazing emotional and spiritual benefits that they got from the oils. And apparently Gary just used to sit there and nod and silently smile, and he'd be like, yeah, I know, but you had to figure this all out for yourself. And that was me, because as I've said on numerous videos where we've talked about the emotional oils, I thought it was all hippie woo-woo stuff. I was very much into the physical stuff. I knew what oils were for muscles and the brain and, your skin and all of that kind of stuff. But when it comes to that emotional and spiritual type aspect of the oils, it took me to have my own experience to actually realize how powerful they are in stimulating the limbic system, where we store emotions and things like that, to actually work out how good they are. So, what's in acceptance oil?
I've got a list and I've broken it down. There are 19 different oils, and I broke them down into categories because I think I'm going to give you my little take on this. So there's some big tree oils, that's what I call them. So there's things like frankincense, royal Hawaiian sandalwood, ocotea, blue cypress. Now all of those have lots of sesquiterpenes, and I reckon they're awesome for grounding you. They're very spiritual oils. And that's a good place to start with the acceptance, is that sense of being grounded.
And, if you want a good way to remember how to use the oils, the things that are up the top of the tree, like the leaves and the flowers, are usually very uplifting, whereas the tall trunks of the trees, like oils that are gained from the sort of the whole tree or the trunk of the tree and the roots, they're very grounding. So that's why those tree oils are very grounding.
So you've got the tree oils, then you've got the flowers. So it's got geranium, ylang-ylang, jasmine, blue tansy, davana, and also just a hint of rose, I think. And German chamomile. When I think of those things, I think of uplifting. And then the third group is really interesting. They're all citrus oils. So that you've got bergamot, neroli, which I didn't know was a citrus oil.
Yep, neroli
comes from bitter orange.
Yeah.
So,
you can actually get 3 oils from the same tree.
Yes. Yeah. From different parts of the same tree.
Yeah.
So it's got grapefruit, it's got tangerine, it's got lemon, and it's got kaffir lime. Or what's it called? Citrus hydrix.
Yeah.
So, and when I think of citrus, I think of stuff that brings back the joy. So, orange makes you happy. I think all those, that's a joy thing, which is kind of cool because when you think acceptance is like being grounded, being uplifted, bring back the joy. And the last two, coriander and spearmint. And I think coriander actually was in Ramesses II's tomb. They found it there. So it's an old kind of spice. Soothing and calming is what it's used for.
So the reason why Gary actually created this blend was that what he was seeing was that a lot of people were doing work on themselves, so doing some personal development and things like that, but things still weren't changing for them, okay? So he wanted to open people's minds up to new things, to new possibilities, new people, new relationships, even, like we talked last week about abundance, and I mentioned that I often like to diffuse abundance and acceptance together because a lot of us, particularly healers, we aren't all that open to receiving. We're very giving and we're not open to receiving. So if that's you, and even as a mum, I find that like we're always open to giving and not very good at receiving. So acceptance, is a great oil for learning to actually accept, or maybe you need to accept some compliments. I know Jeremy will tell you I'm really bad at that as well.
You're terrible.
I am. So some acceptance oil in the diffuser, because we can't reach our highest potential without actually being open to acceptance and receiving. So even think oils like release. So you can actually use acceptance like you use release over your liver. A couple of other places that you can use it. If you've ever felt like you don't belong, like if you're finding it hard to fit in, or if your child's finding it hard to fit in and they don't feel like they belong, then you can put it on the solar plexus. So when we talk about the chakras, the solar plexus is just below our belly. Maybe you're feeling like you're embarrassed, and then you put it on your hypothalamus, which is actually the point for your hypothalamus is on the bridge of your nose. If you're feeling like you're insecure, so maybe you're insecure in a relationship or at work, just in life about things that you might feel like you're insecure, you put it on your ilium point. And the ilium point is actually on your 10th rib. So it's kind of like down the bottom on your side, and you can do it on either side. It doesn't really matter. So that's for insecurity. If you've experienced sorrow or grief, then acceptance oil is really good. Like you would have heard about the stages of grief that people go through, like even Jeremy with his neck. Yeah. When you go through grief, like you go through the anger and all the different stages, and eventually you come to acceptance. And it's not saying that you're going to use acceptance oil and you're immediately going to accept it. We talked last week a lot about the power of affirmations and the power of the word. So every time you use acceptance, create a saying. So it might be something like, give me the power to accept that, what's the saying of the 12-step program? I think it's the serenity to accept all the things that I cannot change. Yep. So whatever it is, whatever your actual affirmation is that goes with the acceptance oil, I accept things that happen in my life that I can't control, whatever your saying is, and then use your acceptance oil. So you can use it on those points that I just mentioned. You can also use it on your ear. You have a lot of emotional points on your ear. You probably would have heard me talk about your mother and your father points on your ears before. So if you have issues with your parents, you can use the acceptance oil. Which was the one? Back to the point for the sorrow and grief. You can actually, it's the bronchial point. So the bronchial point is sort of on either side of your sort of chest plate, your bone sort of thing. So just sort of not really on your heart, but it's more on either side of like where your lungs would probably come out, I guess. That's your bronchial point. So if you've got sorrow or grief, or your child's going through sorrow or grief, acceptance is a good oil to use. And as I said, you can make up a roller, or even just tapping on those points. Like I've talked before about emotional freedom technique and the tapping, and once again using an affirmation to use that oil. And lastly, I guess the other thing that acceptance is good for is overcoming procrastination or denial. So if you are out there and you are a big procrastinator and you want to overcome procrastination, then diffusing or using acceptance oil is a definite go-to. One contraindication is that it does contain sweet almond oil. So if you have a nut allergy or anyone that you know has a nut allergy, then they shouldn't use this essential oil blend. Now I use that word blend. Some of you will have heard me talk before about the difference between a synergy and a blend. Young Living calls all of their synergies and blends, but in fact this is a blend, because it does contain a carrier oil. It contains the sweet almond, whereas a lot of Young Living's blends don't contain any carrier oil, so technically they're a synergy. So just a little piece of trivia.
It smells fantastic.
I love it. I just want to also wish the lovely Danae Cazzola a happy 5-year Young Living anniversary. She commented earlier today saying that she got this oil for free with her very first order, and she immediately fell in love with it. Yep. And one of the ways she likes to use it is to make it up into a bath soak. So she uses the oatmeal, Epsom salts, bicarb soda, and the acceptance oil, and puts it in her bath. And it's like, you know, I can just see Cleopatra Danae laying there in the bath. So everyone wish Danae happy 5-year anniversary. I said to her that doesn't time fly when you're having fun. So
she's achieved some amazing things.
Absolutely. The trips that we've been on with Danae have been so much fun, the best times. So, you know, she's definitely done an amazing job, and her team are so blessed to have such an amazing leader. So, all right, we will see you next week. I think we're going to talk about Australia Blue next week.
Oh, I love it. Okay, that's one of my favourite oils. But if you haven't got if you haven't got acceptance, it's definitely a good one to add to your order. Yeah. You
can wear it as a perfume. It's one of the, Valor, Peace and Calming, Release. They're my perfume oils. So love Acceptance. All right, see you next week.
See you guys.
Bye.